This is our last in our series on Thank God It's Monday. Our series integrating and thinking about our work and our faith, and I hope it's generated some thoughts and some ideas and some help in terms of your own journey of your faith and your work. Particularly today, as I want to look at the idea of rest. That sounds good, huh? Thank God it's Monday. Well, how about the fact that we get to rest? The doctor, a guy goes to the doctor, and the doctor said, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is you've got a week to live. The bad news is you're so busy, I've been trying to get a hold of you all week. I went to the eye doctor a few years back, and he said, you've got type A eyes. And I said, really? I didn't know eyes could have personality types. And he said, well, yours do. And he said, they refuse to relax. And I said, that doesn't sound good. And he said, no, it's not, really. So wasn't there a time when life was easier, it seems like for some of us, maybe not so ramped up? Maybe it was for the couples, for just a minute, I'll speak to you. There was a time when it was just you and your prince or princess, and it was quiet dinners and romantic evenings and starry nights. Remember those, Hannah? Oh, well, maybe it was never really that way, okay, but that's how we remember it. And now the prince has turned into a frog. He's dragged you into the swamp, and you've got one or two or three little frogs and a tadpole on the way. And frankly, everybody is croaking. You know what I'm saying? And you feel like you're about to. Now, do you ever have this wild fantasy that things will get easier at some point? They'll, what we call, settle down. And I think it's true. The seniors among us could tell us, is there rest for the weary? Well, yes, in some ways, yes. But now we've got some of the older parents have grown kids at home, and we've got grandparents with children underfoot, or maybe there's aging parents, and then there's aches and pains, and the process of aging is not all that friendly sometimes. We're falling apart. I don't know. Possibly for a few years there are some relatively stress-free years. But for most of us, between relationships and career and finances and health and trauma and family, life is just this force of a hurricane. And we live on the verge of chaos, stressed out and often out of control. And what's interesting is the Bible in Genesis chapter 1, as it calls us to be the people of God, says be fruitful. That is to be productive. To put yourself to some task and to get working and to be busy. To rule the earth and subdue it. We get that all out of our creation mandate right there in the big opening sections and salvos of Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And it's beautiful. But sometimes our compulsion for productivity drives us. And it becomes a controlling factor in our life. And this day in the 21st century, 24/7 accessibility to work, where we're wired with devices and email and iPads and phones and retail stores. I mean, we got all the back to school stuff. We'll turn right around and we'll be ready for Halloween. We'll turn right around and there'll be Christmas stuff going up. Are you tired? I wrote some questions and they're all for me. Do you have trouble relaxing? Focusing or finishing? Are you unfamiliar or uncomfortable with quiet? Do you feel a pervasive sense of dissatisfaction, maybe because of overreaching or comparison or greed? This entire series, we've been talking about jobs and careers, and it dominates so much of our life, and it consumes us, our attention, but it's not supposed to master us. It's like asking a person, so how's your work? And they say, well, it's busy, it's really busy. This is our busy season. Okay, I see it's your busy season. I assume that'll finish soon. Oh no, when we're not in our busy season, that's when we're in our super busy season. You know what I mean? We're getting ready for our busy season. And as it relates to this series, there are some among us who are work is eating you like a ravenous wolf. Now I want to contrast that, and go ahead and put up our slide, Rick, of this young woman. I want to contrast that for just a minute. Let's just see if we can slow down and step back. In an ancient Jewish home, in a contemporary Orthodox Jewish home, sunset on Friday night to nightfall of the next day, here's the thing, it was not ordinary time. Sabbath was different. The world suddenly became a place of rest. And all work was brought to this amazing standstill, and vendors closed their shop and they locked the door, and no one was in the fields, and the home was transformed, and everyone put on new clothes for the occasion, and the woman of the house put on these white candles or lit the candles, and the whole assembly came to welcome in the seventh day, and there was this atmosphere of joy and festivity. Does that sound a little romantic? I mean, maybe it's a bit idyllic. But here was the metaphor used sometimes, that the Sabbath was viewed as a bride or a queen that would arrive. In other words, what would you do if the queen was to come and stay at your house for a day? It's a holy day, and it was set apart. And when bedtime came, the family rested in God's covenant protection. And they woke in the Sabbath morning to a world they didn't make, and to a refreshment with God that they did not earn. Isn't that beautiful? I read in Exodus chapter 20 in verses 8 through 10, and we're going to read this passage, and I want to ask you a question. Go ahead and put up the text there. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. Is there one more verse there? Okay, no, that's good. That's fine. Okay, there it is, the Sabbath. Here's my question. If you had to come up and develop a society and got a chance to write up 10 laws for how a society should function, you might put in it something like, do not murder, and do not steal, and do not covet, and remember who's in charge, the Lord your God. Would you, as one of your 10, have put this one in? Sabbath as one of the 10 commandments. It is highly, so important in God's perspective. And I want to see if we can get to the reason, the bottom why, before we make a few applications this morning. Remember, put our Genesis 2 passage up. There was our Genesis 2 section. This is the first time the Sabbath is mentioned. But remember Genesis 1, it's all about we're created to do this work. It's all about Genesis 1, God creating the world, and it's good, it's good, it's good. We have Genesis 2 then, the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the seventh he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and he made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. He set the day apart. It's distinct from the other 6 days. There's this holiness about this day, and we are to follow in that same pattern. And here's the word I want to suggest to you. It's rhythm. It's finding a rhythm in our lives. Work, 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 rest. That's the biblical pattern. Now, I don't have much rhythm. We just sang Rain in Me over in the other service, and that has where you do the hand clapping, and I tried to do it on the first verse, and then I gave up. I wouldn't even have done that part, except I was trying to follow somebody, but if you just don't have it, you don't have it. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. Is it happening in your life? Is the rhythm there? And we see the rhythm in this opening section of Genesis chapter 2. So we've got the command in Exodus 20. We've got the... Now, this is why I like beer commercials. Okay, finally you're listening. Okay. Now, I mean, white collar work, I just noticed it just never ends. This morning I got up, went to my desk, I was trying to get ready for the day today, and I made about 14 notes of things I've got to get done this week. It never ends. That has just cropped up since Friday. It's all good, I love it, but there's no end to it. But that's why I like beer commercials, because they show hard-working construction guys, okay? And they complete a task, and they feel the satisfaction at the day's end, and they're being handed a cold one. And the point of the commercial is, this is as good as it gets. We know that's wrong. That's not exactly true, that's not as good as it gets, as mighty good as it might be. But the point is, there's something deeper in that there's work and then there's rest. And we see it right here in this rhythm of our text. Now, in our section this morning that Andy read, and thank you, Andy, for reading, and thank you for participating in the life of this church and all the ways you're getting involved. And Andy's been running the soundboard when Carl is not here, and is much, much appreciated. Now to get him up here reading Scripture, love it. Notice this text, it's 16:27. Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather it, but they found none. Okay, God was honoring the work rest, but the people were not. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions?" Seems rather to the point, doesn't it? Rather blunt. You're missing it. The seventh day is for rest. Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That, and I don't remember the rest of the passage, is why on the sixth day he gives you the bread for 2 days. You're going to have enough. So don't look for it on the Sabbath. Everyone is to stay where they are on the seventh day. No one is to go out. So the people rested on the seventh day. Here's what is going on. The main idea is don't work. Was that hard to get? Don't work. Here's why. You are not in charge of the world. You're not in charge of your work. You're not even in charge of your family, of your life. And here, put in one snapshot, is a quote by Bill Bright that I think might capture it, and you might want to write it down and think about this. Working constantly may be a visible proof that deep inside we do not trust God. Now, I'm all for work. We've been talking about it from the last 6-7 weeks. It's extremely important. I'm all for productivity. I'm all for being fruitful. I'm all for doing that in keeping with God's design. But here's the point. There's a seventh day, and it is for rest. And here's what this is about. Relinquishing control of our life to God. That's the point in the Exodus passage. I want to give you one more idea, and I want to come back and see if we can apply it. And the idea is this. When this is repeated again in Deuteronomy, the 10 Commandments are repeated. This time, this word is used. Remember. Remember. Wasn't mentioned quite this way in Exodus, but now it says, remember. Remember, I, the Lord your God, brought you out of Egypt. Remember how I helped you through the desert. Now on that seventh day, when you are keeping the Sabbath, what are you to be doing? You are to be remembering what I have done for you. You are to be remembering and recalling and reimagining my deliverance, and in fact, the freedom I've given you. You start putting these ideas together. Stop your production, relinquish your control, and remember. And what do we have? I would say it is all brought together for us in many ways in the Lord's Supper. Now, I'm not going to develop that too much today, but I want you to think about that. That is the crux of Sabbath for us. Because we remember and we relinquish and we are entrusting ourselves again to the God who provides. Now, early in church history, the Sabbath moved from Saturday to Sunday. Not rigidly, but meaningfully, as a gift from God. And Jesus becomes the Sabbath rest, celebrated on the Lord's Day. And so we stop striving to earn our salvation. It is a gift. And we no longer live under the burden of the law or be obsessed with a guilty conscience or the fear of the future, because we've been saved by grace through Jesus Christ. And we recall that when we come together on the Lord's Day. And so remember Jesus saying, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And what's his point? The Sabbath is God's gift to us. So I want to get practical here, and the first thing I want to suggest, and this may apply to some of you more than others, because some of us are at a place in our life where it's not quite as critical, but for those of us who are needed, I want to give you permission to get some sleep. I was recently reading a series of books that were on the Sermon on the Mount and on practicing spiritual disciplines in our life, and disciplines like prayer and fasting and scripture reading and having an accountability partner and all of these great spiritual disciplines. And you know where he started the book? The very first one was this: get some sleep. If we could actually do that, we are underserved. We could actually get some perspective on our lives and bring that to bear on the rest of our work. And that would be okay. Okay, that one was free. That was a bonus. Now the 3 points. Number one is this. Try this. By practicing Sabbath, you develop a rhythm for your life. Okay? Work, 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 rest. And in contrast to chaos, that God brings order, and order is God ordained. And so there's a beginning and a completion and an end and a beginning again. And there's day and night, and there's seasons: spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter. And there's breathing. We breathe in and we breathe out. And can you see, life is all about rhythm. And I want to suggest that as much as possible to sync your life with God's rhythms. That's just beautiful. I think as we do that and as we're aware of that, we're conscious of God and God's work in the world and God's work in our lives and our families. Number two, by practicing Sabbath, you relinquish control to God. Work is not our master. We are not its slave. Time is not our master. We are not its slave. And this is a powerful exercise of remembering and experiencing our deliverance in Christ. You are not a human doing. You are a human being. For you, let me ask you, this is hard, is being with God enough? Is that enough? I think it's so easy for many of us just to, when we would say to be with God, would feel like a waste of time. That's not what I'm reading here in Scripture. You say, well, I'm not ready to stop. Everybody put your number 2 pencils down, okay? We do not stop when we are finished. We do not stop when we make the last call, print the last copy, get through the last email, or run the last errand. We stop because it is time to stop. That is wisdom from God. That means for the young people, maybe stop asking all those questions. Am I doing the right things with my life? Is this the right college? Am I taking the right classes? Is this the right job for me? Is this the right person for me? What am I doing? What am I accomplishing? For some of us, there's a different stage in life. What's my next purchase? There's 1,000 relentless questions. Stop it. Just for 24 hours, okay? Then you can ask again. But take the Sabbath. Practice letting go for the next 24 hours of the things that stress you out. Okay, you're at odds with somebody right now? What about for the next 24 hours you just said, I'm taking a Sabbath from that relationship. It'll wait for another day. What about bad competition that's going on in your life? What about that to-do list? Just set it aside 24 hours. All right, number 3. By practicing Sabbath, you reconnect in your most significant relationships. You see, where does joy and contentment come from? Achievements, acquisitions, accomplishments, those are all good. I think it comes from relationships. Sabbath is not simply about time, but about relationships. Time with God in prayer and quiet, or visiting with someone you love, or having coffee with a friend. In other words, it is both rejuvenation and celebration. And so I want to do a call out here that I think is one of our worst enemies of all, and that is entertainment. We have confused Sabbath with entertainment. I love to hit a tennis ball. I play golf on Friday morning, and I find it restorative, okay? It's rejuvenating. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. I love being out on the course. I don't know what it is about having a stick in your hand. I mean, it's great. Okay, I watch Netflix. The movies are good. A lot of times on Sunday night, Becky and I'll go to a movie after all the church stuff is done. I'm not down on entertainment. I'm just telling you, it's not Sabbath. It's only a part of it. Here's the reason why. By and large, entertainment is distraction. Distraction has a benefit. It moves my mind into something other than what I'd been concentrating on, the work. So it is beneficial in that sense. But distraction alone is not Sabbath because it misses too much in terms of renewal with God and in terms of celebration with community. So here's my next challenge. Be in church on Sunday morning. Now, in 2 weeks, I'm not going to be here. But I'm going to take attendance. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be at my son's wedding up in Michigan. Some others from this church are going to be gone. So I understand. We live in a mobile world. We do lots of things. We take vacations. I'm saying as much as possible. Make it an effort to be a part of this rhythm of work, 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 work. How many did I get? Work, rest. Okay? In the year 2000, the literature says that Christian people who went to church 3 times a week in 2016 now go 1 time a week. And the people who went 1 time a week in 2000 now go 2 to maybe 3 times a month. I don't know what all that's about. There's a cultural shift, but it makes it so hard to have community, to build what God would like to create among us, for us to love each other in the ways that He is calling us to. So again, the call of Sabbath, probably expressed most beautifully in Isaiah 58 and 13 and 14. Not going to put that slide up, but in that passage, it is a call back to the meaning of Sabbath. And you might look that passage up, Isaiah 58, 13 and 14, and read it this week. It moves beyond distraction. And what he says in the text is, take delight in the Lord. That is ultimately our deepest Sabbath. Last illustration, I'll be done. The Romans made fun of the Jews. They thought it was ridiculous that you should waste 1/7 of your life by doing nothing during that 1 day of the week. I want to suggest that that is the world's view, and yet so much of that thinking has duped and captured our hearts. And what the Romans didn't understand is that holy time is the apex of the week. It is the most significant time. It is God's time. It is all about God's goodness and God's gratitude and God's grace. And by making this time holy, order is brought to the other 6 days. And not just order, but memory and perspective to the other 6. And not just perspective, but celebration. And not just celebration, but receiving the Sabbath brings us to Jesus, the true and the ultimate Sabbath rest. And I pray this morning that I've convinced you of the importance of the Lord's Day, of this worship, and of the gift God has given you in commanding you to rest. He loves you deeply. And he created the Sabbath for you.